Welcome to Active Love Adoptions podcast. I'm your host, Mackenzie Love, and today we have Heidi.
Hello.
She is behind the camera.
The voice behind the camera.
Yes. And we say this on every podcast. We're getting closer and closer to getting her in front of the camera.
I have been in front of the camera once.
One time.
One time
You're
I
not
have.
portrayed in the...
No, she's not.
I'm like,
know.
oh my gosh.
No.
I don't.
No, those are all on you guys.
Yes.
Yay.
We are here today with my friend Shayla, who is also a birth mom. And when did we meet? It was at Ashley's house, right? Is that the first time we met? I feel like we might have gone to elementary school
think it was
too.
At
Us?
some point.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
No, I'm
Do
just
I
kidding.
not know this?
I'm just kidding. I can't remember.
I lose when I laugh.
Didn't you go? It's okay, I did too. Didn't you go to school with all of us or no?
No, but that's why I appreciate you guys like inviting me to so many like things, because you guys went to school, you're high school like best friends, that tight group, and I'm like, you guys just brought me in you adopted me into.
Ashley brought you in. Yeah.
I think she invited me to like she's like, do you want to come to this girls' night? Mm-hmm. It was at your house. And I'm pretty sure I was pregnant at the time.
Yes.
And I think that was a huge reason. And I was like, did you know she's a birth? She's like, yeah, I felt like you guys might. I'm like, did you
might
know?
hit it off.
Yeah, but you were so sweet. And you helped me not feel alone. I remember you specifically saying like, and I remember thinking it was like odd and weird. I just didn't understand the emotions that would come after labor and just kind of that grief and the mixed emotions. But you said, even before, you're like, if you ever want to call me and just scream and sob, you're like, if you just want to scream because you're so angry or sad, call me. And I remember thinking, like, okay, I'm not that crazy. And then I became that crazy. No, I remember like, oh my gosh, there were so many nights where I did scream. I would drive in my car and I'm just like, why is life this way? But at the same time, it's a lot of grace there's consequences from actions. Yeah. But then there's so much grace and beauty from ashes in a way.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. It's hard going through placing your child, especially when it's, your first time giving birth. It's your first time holding your child and then having to turn around and make a huge life decision. It's extremely difficult. And I just remember screaming and crying. And
I'm gonna cry. We've already cried like 3 times before.
I know, before we even started. It's okay. It's okay. We can cry. We're gonna let it out. We're gonna feel it all. But I do say that to birth moms all the time. Just let it out. Just cry.
Oh, I don't hide it. I learned not to. Otherwise, it will surface other ways or physically a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. And that's a whole different topic. My my marriage and divorce. I'm really grateful I went through that because I learned not to hold in emotions. I kept thinking, oh, I'm fine. This is normal.
Yeah.
And everyone kept telling me, I kept testing positive for different sicknesses. And people would tell me it was stress. I'm like, no offense. And I'm eating my words. I thought that was an excuse middle-aged women or like midlife crisis use. I'm like, it doesn't make you sick, because my mom would always be like, I'm so stressed, like what you're doing to me. Yeah. And I put her through a lot as a teenager. And now I'm like, oh, I'm paying for it. And I've apologized to her a couple times and cried. I'm like, oh my gosh, I put you through stress. Yeah, it's just crazy because I kept testing positive for like flu, staph infection, when the flu finally like had a test.
Right.
And just, I was always, it seemed like on antibiotics. I'm like, it's not that I'm feeling under the weather. I kept getting sick. I'm like, and they kept thinking I had immune
Autoimmune.
Yeah.
Thank you. Autoimmune like disease. They tested me like they were convinced I had shingles, I had that 3 times, which you don't get.
Gosh.
I had shingles, and that is not.
It is the
fun.
worst.
It is
That is
so
the worst
bad.
pain.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
so
And
bad.
like you don't get that unless severe trauma
Yeah.
or emotional.
Really?
And you're
I
like
don't know.
surprised, or like emotional trauma or distress, or
That is so interesting.
elderly. Like a lot of my residents.
I'm elder.
You are not.
You are not.
Get out of here.
I'm 52.
Oh my
Exactly.
gosh.
You're still a
53.
baby.
My residents
Get out
are
of here.
80s and 90s.
Okay, I'm not that elder, but
So I got shingles when I was
my
10
gosh.
or 11.
Yeah, I had it when I was younger, and it stays
wonder.
on one side, but then it resurfaces if you
Yeah,
have like
stressful.
a compromised
Immune.
autoimmune system, or really like you have to have severe stress or trauma.
Yeah.
And-
it is not a fun thing to have.
I don't even remember.
No,
I
but-
probably pushed that out of my memory.
You did? Well, that's pretty good because I've had it resurface a couple times.
Yeah, I haven't had it
Yeah.
since, so I'm hoping
Right?
that
That's
does
another
not
thing
happen.
was like, you've got to be kidding me. But honestly, and so going back to like, it's interesting with stress. As soon as got divorced, stopped getting sick. I'm not even kidding. It was like night and day, and I'm like, oh, this is weird. I haven't had to go to the doctor in a month, and yeah, it was just crazy. I didn't realize everyone started saying that to me, like, and that's when I realized, okay, emotional stress, I get sick. So with this whole birth, labor, and then the grief, I made myself face it because eventually it will always resurface. At some point, it will resurface, and it's not pretty.
No,
no
and
matter.
that's a good lesson that you learned, though,
Yeah.
Yeah.
with your
Oh,
divorce.
the hard
You know
way.
what I mean, I know. But you're
think we
still
will.
young. A lot of people, it takes a lot longer for them to learn that.
Oh, yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like with the grief that came after as well, like there was an underlining piece of knowing I made the right decision. And that's the thing is like, it can feel incredibly, it can be unnatural. Like women aren't designed. We are not designed to place and be apart from our children. I feel honored and feel like it's very beautiful that I've felt that and the chemical bond. And I didn't know I was capable of that. I don't think anyone like really knows until you have your child, and then especially holding them skin to skin. But there's, despite the grief and like, you know, I'd feel guilty. I'm like, okay, but this is what I chose.
Yeah.
And despite that, though, it's like I had the underlining piece of I knew it was right, and like the destiny, and what I knew it was what I chose. And like I still had those like very painful dark nights.
Yeah.
And those dark nights, they can be long, and grief comes in waves. It's not like, oh, I think I'm healed after a month. You're like, okay, I've been through enough therapy. I'm completely healed. It comes in waves and there's triggers.
Yeah.
But I also think it's really beautiful, like to process and feel. And when you do hold a sacred space and compassion for yourself and not feel guilt, like that was the hardest thing. I felt selfish for being like, oh, what was me? Because I knew it was my choice. I knew. And so many people, you know, they ask, why did you give up your child? And I get it. Like before, unless you've been through this,
Yeah.
you don't, and the language, it can be, what is the word I'm looking for?
Insensitive. Is
Yeah.
that what you mean?
I guess,
Like the
yeah.
way that they talk to you?
Even though that's not the intention.
Right.
It's,
Well, it's probably just ignorance, honestly.
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like they
ignorance.
just they don't understand. They can think they understand and they can put their own perspective on it, but they don't really know.
And before I went through this, you know, I felt the same way. I'm like, how could you do that? And I had such a different outlook.
Yeah.
I didn't know what open and closed adoptions was. And I'm like, whoa, there's open, closed, there's private. I'm like, what's the difference between like private agency or private adoption? And I'm like, holy cow, there's so much I don't
Yeah.
know. And when people ask, like, how could you give up your child? And like, you've heard me say this a couple times. I'm like, I didn't give him up. I gave him more. I'm not saying that's the right choice. And you guys know of all people, like, I'm not saying that's the right choice for every woman. I think any choice when it comes to any form of motherhood is the ultimate heartbreaking sacrifice. And that also includes, like, I have a couple of friends that went through abortion. I considered abortion. I took a class. I even booked an appointment, ended up canceling before my first ultrasound. And I just think whatever decision that's between you, people don't understand the emotions and the thought that go into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't have to live your life. Right. I mean, they don't walk in your shoes, so.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of bad stigma with birth moms, and I don't understand why.
Yeah.
I mean, because in my case, I'm grateful for birth moms. I wouldn't be a mother without.
Yeah, I don't know your story, and
Well, I have adopted 4 times, so I have 4 little peanut. Well, they're not little anymore. My oldest is going to be 30.
You.
Thank you.
No, it's like you idolize each other, like you're doing the unimaginable.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I adore my children.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're a good mom.
Couldn't love them any more than I do. I can't imagine. I mean, maybe I could.
You can edit this out, but I always tell my friends and like Ashley, I'm like, I feel like I've never met a good parent that isn't, if like, you're not a good parent if you can't call your kids little shits. Like, but man, you love those little shits.
Oh, yes, you do. It's so true.
I mean,
yes.
You say your children are perfect.
My children are not perfect, but I love them anyway.
Yeah, you're like, man, I love those little shits.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, you can edit that
Especially
out.
No, I love it.
My youngest is like that, but he was conceived with a vasectomy too.
Oh yeah.
Well, not a
Wait,
vasectomy.
what?
So his biological mom's tubes were tied.
Yeah. Yeah.
At my baby, and he was.
That's possible?
Yes, and can I
yeah.
tell you that's his personality.
Yeah.
So
What does that even mean?
his personality is I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
You can't stop me.
Yeah, you're not going to stop me.
I love
I'm
that.
going to full bore do what I want. You can't tell me what to
See,
do.
like red personality. Or...
He is. Well, and you know what's funny is he was always that way, and he very quiet. He doesn't talk a
little
lot.
yellow in him, too.
No, yeah.
Really observant. It sounds.
Yeah. So, but that child, I don't know where he came from. I mean, he played football, cocky as hell. I mean, thought that he was God's gift, you know. So and he's not very big, but he was amazing. Both of my boys played football, and they were really good. But I just wanted to slap that child half the time.
And he's like, and here I still came,
No,
even though
I still have all
I'm a
4 of
miracle.
my children at home.
Yes.
So I'm like,
my tissue.
they have not gone anywhere. They're still home.
Yeah.
I'm like, can you go out? I could use some grandkids now. Like, hello, I love ya. Although I do tell them that they could live with me forever if they want.
Do you think they'd be? Have you talked? I mean, I know it's way soon and stuff, but do you think they would ever adopt?
Oh yeah, they've said that they would.
I love that.
Yeah, they said that they would. I mean, it's kind of something that's in the family.
Yeah.
Since my mom's the founder, and there's a total of 10 of us.
Okay, sorry, that does
you're
make sense because the Kaylee. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so there's 10 of us total. So I'm the oldest, and then I have one other biological sibling. And then there's 8 adopted of all different shades and colors.
I love that so much.
So, and my 4 are African American
I love
too. So I got 2 boys, 2 girls. So
Yeah.
beautiful skin. I know.
Yes,
I'm like, oh my
no,
gosh,
it
you
is.
don't age.
I know, right? It's
Well,
so
and,
true.
and the thing is,
I know.
I remember when my sister
You can edit
that's
that out.
my biological sister that's just below me, when she had her baby, he was so pale. That's all I kept thinking because mine were brown and this really pretty colored skin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is he sick? Because he's
he
really
okay?
pale. And people always ask if I see color, and I'm like, in all honesty, the only time you ever see it is when I'm in a mirror and they're right by me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my
That's how it
gosh,
should
I'm
be.
so white.
Oh,
I'm so pale. I'm like, I need a tan or something. But
same.
I don't see it. I just see my babies.
Yeah.
So now that they're men and women, they're not really babies, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We tell them all the time, get used to it. You're gonna be, even if you're like 70 and we're somewhere in the 90s.
I'm still the baby.
still
That's
the
how they
baby.
introduce
Still my
me.
baby.
Everyone, they're like, "This is our baby," and it used to annoy me. And now the older
should.
you
Yeah,
get,
you
like I
should love
realize
that.
they're getting older too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
scary. It gets
especially
different.
taking care of residents and like seeing within a week their lifestyle and health, and they can like
How fast it can go.
and it makes me, oh my gosh, I was so ungrateful. I was an ungrateful little brat, and I'm like, I put you through so much.
I think we all.
I think,
all
I
feel
think,
that way,
I think
right?
so at
Yeah.
some point, right? We
Yeah.
put our, I mean, that's what a parent's job is, to deal with they all did it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So I'm sure that they put their parents through hell. So
yeah.
now it was your turn to
Yep.
put them through
The
hell.
cycle.
It's a circle of life.
Yeah, circle of
It's a
life.
circle of life.
So let's start from the very beginning. You got. Did you choke? Okay.
No, I just like from the beginning.
From the beginning. When you were a tiny little embryo.
Sounds so professional.
Does it? Thanks. I get very few moments like that. So you got a divorce, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And then you got pregnant shortly after that?
No, and a lot of people ask, and like I would too, if I were any outsider, a lot of people will ask if it was from my ex-husband
Yeah.
at the time. And what's interesting is what was really hard was that, so when we got divorced, it wasn't, there was no cheating, we were sealed in the temple, there were no broken covenants involved.
Yeah.
It was a really hard thing to accept, and I could go into that for a while, but that you can have the good intentions and the intent to bring out the best and make them so happy and show them you have the intention to make them feel the most loved, and that's what you truly want. You can have that for each other and have good intentions, but still be toxic for each other.
Oh, yeah.
And still bring out the worst in each other, despite hoping and wanting.
Yeah.
And what was hard was that what's awesome is to see that him married to the right person, someone that does bring out the best in him. I mean, it came with mixed emotions.
Yeah.
At the same time, it was very much closure and very surreal. I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Like, and just, I feel like I should be jealous, but I'm not. And that was very strange to me too. I was ready to be, I had resentment, and I think because I had to when you let resentment go, you're like, it makes you physically sick. It makes me physically sick to hold that in.
Yeah.
It does more on the person holding the resentment, but
Yeah.
they end up having a baby boy. So I had Hayden February 13th, and then they had their baby boy that same year on Christmas. And I was just, and I knew that we had always talked about, like starting our family. And at the time when we separated, we were about to close on a house we were building. It had just been finished built in Saratoga Springs.
Yeah.
I remember like we planned on starting our family. He had just graduated. He graduated during our separation. And during that, and if we had waited, he felt so bad, but he was like, oh, you're going to hate me. If we'd waited 2 days, it had switched in Utah, the law from 90 days to 30. But because we did it 2 days before, and we couldn't have it expedite. But during that time, he would show up and be like, we still have 60 days to work it out. You have 30 days, make me change my mind. And he would show up. That's a whole different topic. But I think
That's so hard though.
Yeah.
yeah, it was really hard, but it was necessary. I don't have the bitter, oh, I should have seen the red flags. It was right when we got married. It was right when we ended.
Is that thunder? That's loud.
Oh, it was right when we then divorced.
Divorce.
Then the divorce.
The thunder came.
But yeah, just to see, I think that was really kind of hard to see. Like we planned on starting our family right the first month of our separation, like through that 90-day process.
Yeah.
And we planned on starting, and he always wanted a baby boy first. And I ended up having a baby boy. And I knew what he wanted to name him. And then they had that baby boy and named him that. And it was right, but it was hard. I think like when I would get into my own head, there's always going to be opposition, hard nights.
Yeah.
And it's like you torment yourself and you put yourself through it. But there were some nights and I just let myself, I'm like, okay, I didn't want to admit I was feeling this way, but I'm like, okay, I need to process, what am I feeling? And it was hard to admit out loud. I feel like there was a separate path stolen from me. But then I would check myself. I'm like, there were I had actions, there were consequences. And there's a reason why for everything. And you hate hearing that.
Yeah.
And you hate, like, time will heal. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I had a...
I feel like time changes things. I don't think time heals. I feel like it changes things. So your perspective's different. You're able to, heal in a different way. I don't think it ever goes away.
You're able to carry it so it's
a little bit lighter.
You think about like carrying it on your back. Yeah. And I'm very visual learner. Yeah. I'm a very visual person. Yeah. I have to like compare.
Yeah.
But I just picture, the burden is still the same and the pain, but you
can bear it better.
You can bear it and it's light. Mm-hmm. And there's nights like, where you didn't think you could get through the night.
Yeah.
Where I would finally, I'm like, okay, God, I know. I'm like, some nights I'd be like, am I angry at God? Am I angry? And I would have to question. And I'm like, and it was almost, I know it sounds weird. I was almost upset that I'm like, no, I'm not. Like,
yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. Because then you're like, well, what else can I be mad at? Like, am I mad at myself?
You're forced to reflect within.
And say, okay, no, it's not anything outside of me. It's something that I need to figure out.
And you can't deny, like I wasn't able to, I knew I couldn't deny the peace I felt. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think a lot of people, I feel like everyone has a point in their life, and this is going to just sound like it's going all over the place, I swear. I feel like everyone has to go through something that absolutely, no matter who you are, absolutely destroys you and breaks you and brings you to your knees. And
those are the best moments.
And that's where those moments, it either defines you but really.
It does.
And I, Kenzie, you saw this with me, how I used that. I was very much in victim mode for a while that first year, where I'm like, I knew I was angry because I knew I was angry, but then I felt peace and I knew it was the right decision, but it wouldn't mean it didn't mean that I like could still sleep through the night and not wake up every hour and have to feed a baby that's not there.
Oh.
You know what I mean? But I feel like everyone has to go through something that absolutely destroys them and breaks them, brings them to their knees. And then from there, define what you do next defines. But then you can always, there's always like the cup half empty or half full. People forget the cup is refillable.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Boom, boom. Like my drop.
My drop.
I didn't make that up. But yeah, I think that first, and I'm really grateful I experienced all those emotions and the process though, because it made me so much less judgmental of why, like I didn't start drinking until after. And there were, everyone has a void. You've heard me say this before, but like everyone I really feel has a void. Everyone has a void they're trying to fill, and everyone has a different way of filling that void. And what's hard is like some ways are toxic, some ways are not. And sometimes those toxic ways work, but ironically, they work temporarily. And here's the irony in it. I would notice like, oh, okay, I would get through the night, like drink away my sorrows or whatever, or, go have another one night stand, which is really stupid because I'm asking for the same situation. I swear I'm very lucky that didn't happen again. I'm very surprised. But like, even though, so that void would be filled. And I'm like, well, I was able, exactly. But ironically, it's like you pray to have that pain away. And I'm like, I don't want to feel this pain. And it got to the point, and this was the most lonely, I remember this was the most miserable feeling where I became desensitized. And I'm like, I can't feel like a freaking thing.
Yeah.
And it's just like that song Iris, where you bleed just to know you're alive. And it's funny, like you wish to have that grief away. And like, whether that's from placing baby for adoption, whether that's from divorce or like losing a family member, no matter what brings you to your knees. I had toxic habits, and it took me a long time, and I learned the hard way, but I've learned to have compassion for myself and for others and less judgment, especially when it comes to addiction.
Yeah.
And recovery and everything, and why people do the things they do. Like, everyone's just hurting. They're trying to fill this void. And just because your way looks different than mine, like whether that's pornography, drugs, alcohol, sleeping, like serial dater, like everyone, and even too much of something, gym, which I should probably get. I'm like, gym, that's why I don't go. That's why.
Same. That's not my thing. That's not my thing.
I'm good there. I don't go to the gym.
But yeah, it took me a long time to be able to have compassion for myself. And now I'm a lot less judgmental, and I just understand everyone's just trying they're just trying to survive, and it's their way. A lot of people, it's their way of just staying alive.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to. And I learned there's a difference between being suicidal or just not wanting to exist, but staying alive for other reasons. You're like, I know. And just, I would take Benadryl just to sleep. It was like, I knew I didn't want to do that to any of my family. And especially, like, I would never go anywhere. Like, can you imagine, like, I remember thinking, like, with Hayden, I'm like, I'll be damned if I'm like, I want to make sure that he knows. I know it's going to be so hard. He'll have a point or a couple points in his life where he'll wonder, why wasn't I enough? Yeah. And just have that self-identity. But I really hope that my biggest fear is that he won't know just how loved he was and how much love and thought went into the process. And I would be damned if I was that person that's like, oh, your birth mom killed herself after she had it. I'm like, no. Yeah. And I knew that I had hope for the future, and I knew there were good moments to come. But man, that whole time heals. It was so annoying to hear. And it's like, what do I do with all this pain now?
Yeah.
But it's physical, and it's emotional, and it's spiritual. You hear it. Like, is this really your plan of happiness for your son or daughter? And then I would always check myself, and I would have reminders always. I would receive a text, like, of course, like, I think you did a couple times, like, I just want to let you know I love you so much. And I'd be like, I'm like, is this really your plan of happiness? And then you'd send a text, like, I just love you so much. You're amazing. No, you did that.
But you're loved. I hope you know that. And you do have a purpose. And I do know how hard those days are. I don't talk about them often. I try to. I'm sorry.
No, we're really tired too.
I know, right? We're both exhausted. And this is our third podcast for the day. So
I worked a night shift.
And you worked a night shift. So we're going to struggle today. But no, I think I try to keep positive, almost toxic positivity, which I don't ever want to be that person that's like, no, everything needs to be great. You need to be great. You need to be happy. It's the only way to
survive and get through things.
Right. I do believe that if you see the positive, though, then that makes a ripple effect of positive things happening over and over again. And I know when I start getting in that negative thought process that I stub my toe and then I rip my shirt and then I'm yelling at my kids and then it's like, then something happens to my car or something, you know, like it's just kind of a
universe.
ripple. Yeah. It's like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And I think that I had nights where just like you, just like would just cry all night and be like, I don't have that child anymore.
Yeah.
And that was my purpose.
It's a void.
And I think also like growing up, being told like you're supposed to be a mom, you're supposed to be a wife, you know, and then all of a sudden I got pregnant and I was not a wife, I was not married. Then I gave birth to a child and now I'm not a mom. And there's a part of you that has to go through a really, just like you said, you have to get down on your knees and you have to realize like, okay, I'm more than this. Like I'm more than my experiences. And I can either, like you said, I can let this drag me down and I can play victim and I can be really sad and just feel awful. Or I can have a different mindset where I literally would sit there and imagine my son being the age he is now and being like, okay, is he proud of me? Did I do what I was supposed to do? Like I gave him this life and I want to make my life worth it for him as well. And that thought was the only thing that could get me through. Yeah. Because trust me, there were times where I would just go sit in my car. I would just drive.
Oh, 100%.
I would go to St.
And when
George.
I was pregnant, I'm nothing else to do. All my friends are at the bar and I'm just like pregnant. I felt crazy. Like it was either the most grateful. And happy. And I'm like, I'm so lucky. I have an amazing, like with this day and time, there's such thing as open adoption and it's accepted and it's beautiful. And I feel, I don't mean to be insensitive. I'm blunt and I'm just sharing my personal story. I wasn't the typical stereotype birth mom. And I say that with great sensitivity because I think I don't mean to play victim. I think I put more pressure. I'm like, well, and people like misunderstood. They're like, well, I had the means to financially provide for my son. Or daughter. I didn't know at the time quite yet. I had the means. I wasn't a teenager. I was in high school. At a good living situation. My mom that was really hard. She wanted to raise him so bad. She wanted to raise a baby. And I had to distance myself from that. Was really, really hard. I had to distance myself from my mom, who I'm very close with my parents. They were so supportive and sweet. She wanted to raise, I'm the baby. And so, and then my other siblings are out of Utah, now state. And so that means the grandkids and she just, she really, and I didn't know this until more recent. And I'm glad I didn't learn this till more recent, to be honest. But her patriarchal blessing, talked about, and I really feel like she'll end up still fulfilling that, or she has in other ways. Helping be a mother to other kids that aren't like biologically hers. I didn't know that before, but I remember being like, Mom, like I just need you. And but like I was saying, like there was the highest of highs, or it was like just grief. And it wasn't, and I'd be like, oh, I want to be angry, but then I'm like, I'm not angry. I'm really grateful, but I'm sad because these are emotions, and and it wasn't, no one can prepare to place their baby in how does anyone prepare to place their baby in the arms of another? But at the same time, like this day and time, open adoption's a thing. I have the best relationship with Chelsea, and it's okay if I use the names. I made sure, I'm like, do you want to make up an alias name or adopt a mom? So Chelsea, the adopted mom, and Tom, the adopted dad, and everything, Hayden's parents. I have the best relationship with them. It's very open. And I remember you listening to your episode with you and Ryan, about how you I now understand why some people do close. Before I would totally I'm like, well, how could you do that? And now I'm like, you automatically think, oh, they're better off without me. And in order to heal. And with the podcast I was listening to, like on the way here with I love that she mentioned, and it doesn't mean it's more agonizing or anything, but like with open adoption and like placing your child, it's not where you can kind of have that closure of bearing a child. I'm not saying that doesn't take away from the pain.
Yeah.
And I've seen, my brother and my sister-in-law, they lost my baby nephew that same year, and that was really rough.
I remember that.
It was really hard because he had tried so hard before I get pregnant. And I remember thinking, here I just got knocked up, and here's this little 14-month-old, my nephew, and they're losing their son, and here I am. And I'm like, and I know my baby boy's alive. I felt guilty, so much guilt. But then, Chelsea, we've talked a lot. We're very open. She feels guilty. There's a lot of guilt when it comes to being adopted. And I didn't realize and understand, and I appreciate more and more. And she opens up to me. She's like, do you want to just hear about the good? I'm like, no, I want to hear about the bad, the hard. Now we're really close, and she'll vent to me. She's like, I just need a break.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
We can hang out. I'm like, it's my genetics. I don't know if it's much of a break. But like, it's been so sweet. And then I felt guilty. Like you channel off this guilt because it's like she is just so mindful, so empathetic. And she just felt I love that she wanted to know how I was doing. I thought that was huge. Like, Steph, how's the baby? It's like, how's Shayla doing?
Yeah.
I think that's huge. And it wasn't like, okay, now that I've had this baby, are you going to still stay in contact?
Yeah.
But no, I know that our relationship's amazing. We've had ups and downs. We had some really rough conversations, but I think those rough conversations, we one time we sat crying on the grounds of the temple. We sat down, she's holding this 2-month-old, and we're just crying.
Oh.
We had a conversation of expectations, but also not getting offended from certain things, and hey, what did you mean when you said this? And it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean this. And that communication's very necessary, and it's important to have those conversations.
I agree. Yeah. Setting those boundaries too. We were talking about that in the past podcast. Try saying that.
Which is hard for
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
all of mine were I don't have contact with any of my birth moms.
Yeah.
So by their choice, not by mine. But yeah, it would be hard.
It is hard
to maintain boundaries. That's what we were talking about in the other podcast.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Just setting boundaries. And, we talk about this all the time, but just setting boundaries, setting healthy boundaries, it's hard. And also, even like you said, with your words, there are things that I'll say that I don't think are offensive. And then all of a sudden I'll be like, oh my gosh, from her perspective, that is so offensive. Well, how about some of my TikToks that I've done and some things that I don't realize are offensive towards her and my birth son, or anyone for that reason. I come from, if you know me, I've
seen any of it, to be honest, what you're talking, or I didn't process that.
Well, just for me, it's when I initially find something that I find is funny, I will post it, and it's never to offend. It's more of just to entertain and be funny. But, and again,
I love your TikToks. You and Ryan, and you're so real. I'm like, oh my gosh, more parents. I send them all the time, my friends who are parents, and they're like, thank you. They're like, yes, someone understands.
Parenting is hard. And we talk about this in every podcast too. Parenting is hard.
Yeah.
It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done, aside from placing my son, which is so funny, right?
It's the ultimate sacrifice. Of heartbreaking sacrifice. And no matter what form of motherhood.
Exactly.
Raising a child, adopting, placing like
Yeah.
the ultimate heartbreaking sacrifice.
Yeah.
Highest of highs, lowest of lows, and like they can be little shits. But man, you love those little shits.
Right? You do so much. I know. I can't imagine. Like, I miss them.
Yeah.
I don't usually work. So when I come to these podcasts, I get home and I'm like excited to actually see them and not drained from the day. But
Well, yeah. And that's the thing is when they're little like yours,
yeah.
when you go out, you feel like something's missing.
Yeah.
All the time.
Right.
It's like, I'm missing something.
Yeah.
Right? I left something behind.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Actually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because you're so used to having them attached to you
At all times.
when they're young like that. And it's like, okay, I
You
feel
just
like...
want a break and like some alone time, but then you're like, I miss them.
I
You
know,
do,
right?
and that's
It's
the
so
problem.
true.
Nap time's
Yeah.
the best, and then you're like, wake up. Oh,
I
you
know,
look so
you're
cute.
so cute.
Never
I
mind,
know.
go back to sleep.
So true, though.
So true.
I feel like I really kind of derailed from like the chronological,
No, you're fine.
or like I'm all over the place.
I think what you have to say is going to be really important to other birth moms because they can relate with you. And I think, this podcast isn't just about, talking about our adoption story or telling our story. It's a grieving process for everyone, even adoptive moms.
Yeah.
We've talked about this. Like it's even with my sister in her podcast. I don't know if you listened to that one, but she talks about having adoption grief and having that grief of, knowing that someone is losing their child and she's gaining. But she said it so beautifully, and I won't be able to say it exactly like she did. But, the birth mom is sacrificing and giving, her biggest joy to me.
answer
and-
prayer, answer
Yeah.
prayer.
And answering a huge, blessing for her. But again, parenting is also hard. And, being an adoptive mom
Scary.
is hard too. Yeah. You're going to do great.
So I have sensory overload so much, and it's funny, I nannied, and then my nieces and nephew, oh my gosh, I love them so much. I can't imagine like loving anything more than like Hayden,
Right.
my nieces and nephews, and then my dog. You're like, oh, you feel like something's missing. I'm like, that's how I feel about my dog. Yeah. I'm like, that's kind of messed up. I'm like, oh my gosh, when I have more kids, and raise, I really know it's going to be no middle ground. It's going to be like,
Yeah.
Right. I know.
oh, I love you.
Yeah.
You're so
No,
cute.
it's true. It's true.
I think most moms are like that, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, I
it's
think
always this or this. There's
Yeah.
not a middle. You're
Right.
either like really happy or
Exactly.
you're like, just get away from me.
Exactly. No, and I think that's
Sticking fingers
literally
under the
how it
pantry.
is, though.
Like that in the bathroom door.
Like running around the house trying to find a quiet space.
Right. While I'm
While
trying
you're
to
talking
talk
on the phone.
Yeah. When I'm trying to talk for work
Go in the
and
car,
stuff,
in the
or
garage, in the car.
shut the door.
So I don't know if you've heard of Raintree. It's in Provo. Mm-hmm. Did you ever live there? I feel
No.
like everyone's.
I feel like everyone, but who lived there though with you? Someone did. I think it was Piper, maybe, or Melissa.
Oh my gosh! I don't think I remember or knew.
I could be totally wrong.
I also lived at Branbury, Carriage Cove.
Okay, all
right
of
by
those
Old
areas.
Mill.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what's funny, I was in Release Side presidency, and two of them and now look at me now.
That's always my friend's favorite story because I was like goody two shoes in high school. I would be like, I'm telling your parents that you guys are drinking in the car right now, and Heavenly Father's so upset with you. And then I was the first one to get pregnant out of high school, and it's like their favorite joke. Like they love getting after me. And they're like, and now look at you, Kens.
Look at me.
Yeah.
Like, don't you?
How are you falling, girl?
I know, but look how much I've grown. So. I'm not judgmental anymore. Though,
Look how much you've grown.
Yeah.
What is the most sensitive and it's triggering, and I know you love it and you're passionate about it, and there's so much love, but it's like also really draining and hard for you to talk about this.
It is.
And then not only once, but I'm like, you're doing another podcast and then another hour, and it's like you're an empath, you soak in emotions, and you feel and you love. I know there's grief, healing that needs to, and I know there's still really hard times.
Yeah.
But you choose to, you're like, okay, I'm really passionate and I have a voice and you know the emotions and you're empathetic because you know this perspective and you also know what it's like to be a parent and have like these kids and be like, I'm responsible for these. But you know
I don't
both.
like thinking about that. It makes me kind of sick to my stomach.
That's
Sorry,
why she's
not
so good
responsible.
At this.
No, right.
Oh, you
That's why
guys,
she's
wow,
so
you guys
good
are
at
so
it.
nice.
Yeah.
There's definitely
You're humble.
You're so nice. I'm something.
My
I don't
shut
know.
up, Kenzie, just take the compliment.
Thank you guys. No, really, I do appreciate you guys saying that. Like, I really do.
She's harder on herself than she needs to.
Which is beautiful. That means
I'm
you have
very
the
hard on myself,
really big heart. I mean, obviously the people that love you the most, it's hard to like accept compliments, and it's like, oh, you've seen the, you know, like Derek, my boyfriend, he's seen the very worst in me. I'm like, how are you? You still love me? Even though I'm like, whenever he compliments me, I'm like, hold on.
Yeah.
You're
what
like,
do you
whatever.
want?
Yeah, what do you want?
What do you want?
I'm like,
That's my favorite thing to say to my husband. What do you want?
and then it's usually something.
Yeah, it's usually it is usually something. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no,
But really. Oh, I love how we drifted off again.
I know. Sorry, Kate. So start back at Raintree.
Okay. So.
You were living at
See,
Raintree.
I'm curious as to what happened when you found out you were pregnant.
Yeah.
That story. And
So it's important. So with Chelsea, I just want to bring up. So Chelsea, her and I met when I was 17. When I lived at Raintree, she was assigned as my visiting teacher in the singles ward. And we have these two pictures. I think I sent them to you, where we went to, one time we went to like, with like her roommates and she was really introverted, but like just so loving. And I knew she served a mission. And I just remember I just think she was the most beautiful smile, and you just feel love and light from her. And I think like that was just foreordained, like, or foreshadow, I don't even know. Like low key, flash forward, like I knew her love was genuine and she wasn't fake at all.
Yeah.
And you know me, I need to recharge, and I'm a little like more introverted. Like you wouldn't think. I need to like recharge and reset, get sensory overload and stuff. But I love people. I love making sure people don't feel alone. And when people are really introverted and quiet, it's like my personality. I'm like, I don't get you.
Yeah.
But I want to. And I'm like,
Right.
And to me, it's the most honor. It's such a privilege and honor once those walls, because you know they only open up to certain people.
Yeah.
And it's not I like figured you out. It's, oh my gosh, like.
You love me that much.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people don't take the time to, I don't like saying break those walls, or even the onion analogy. I don't like
take those layers off. Yeah.
I feel like everyone has such like everyone has something good to offer.
Yeah.
Despite there being a lot of evil in the world and stuff, everyone has their stuff, but I feel like everyone has something good to offer. And then a lot of people don't take the time or like make the effort to really get to know what that is. And she just radiates light. And I remember feeling so loved, and her smiles. I'm like, I feel like whenever I talk about her, I'm like, Chelsea, I sound like I'm in love with you, or like, it sounds like we're in a relationship. Like, we're.
Well, you
Nothing
are.
wrong with that.
Yeah, you guys are.
Together we're motherhood.
Yes,
it's just like that. Another quote I can't quote, but the whole, like I have a part of Hayden, I don't know how to word this. I have a part of him that she'll never have, but she has a part. Like, we're doing that.
Yeah.
I idolize her. We're doing the unimaginable.
Yeah.
My most broken nights, and I can't imagine years. To me, it's harder. I can't imagine.
Adopted.
Yeah, like years.
I say that all the time.
She's like, "What's my purpose?" And I'm like, "I wish you could see yourself the way that I see you." And I'm very grateful to like have that spiritual connection, and just like I wish all my friends could, like, I wish people could see you.
I know. No, I say that to Ryan all the time. In fact, Ryan says this to me all the time too.
Oh.
In a sense where like there are a lot of layers that you have to take off from me, because I am that fun party girl, like,
Oh yeah,
let's have a good time. But then I'm people who don't know that side of me are also like, what? You know, like I definitely have like the more you do have to peel back my layers. And I think it comes from my trauma. I think that's kind of my
absolutely.
It's to protect you.
It is. It's to protect myself. And so it's easy for me to be like that fun, like party girl, like, yeah, everyone come to my house. Let's go hot tub. Let's do this. Let's do that.
Yeah.
When really all I want to do is like sit down and have like really deep conversations with people.
Yeah. And like an intimate setting.
I understand what you mean. Like, I feel like you do. Exactly. You have to peel back those layers.
You do. It's
and you
a good
have
analogy because it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that if you can have that kind of relationship with someone where you get to see all sides of them and you get to show them how beautiful they are no matter what, that creates a really beautiful connection. And
I don't know if you guys have seen, I'm so sorry, I'm the worst. I always interrupt. And
you're
it's
not.
I know
You
I'll
didn't
lose
cut me
the
off.
thought.
You're fine.
I don't know if you guys have seen like this meme of like an extrovert and an introvert, but this is like the best analogy, like where they're in this bubble and the extrovert's like reaching their hand in and the person's like,
Yeah, don't touch me.
Like, hey. But Chelsea, like my very, very best friends, like I'm very much more of a one-on-one person. I love small groups and people I emotionally connect with. That there's few people, you know, it's mainly like awkward humor side they get out of me versus like my very best friends and everything. And my very best friends were like very, I think the resting RBF face. Like everyone's like didn't really talk to them, but like then and I'm like, I'm going to smother you with a love that you didn't want, like that you probably don't even want. And yeah, it was just Chelsea. I'm like, I probably annoyed you so much. I'm like, hey, like joking, teasing. It's how my dad is too. I know I'm so much like him. But Chelsea and I, when she's my visiting teacher, we went to, you know, she's a couple years older than me. But we went to a BYU basketball game. We went to a lacrosse game. I remember her and I just walking together. And I'm like, okay. Like, and I have this insecurity and I'm working on it, and I'm a lot better now, where it's like, if I don't understand someone, I think they hate me or don't like me. I'm like, oh, they must not, they're not being all like, or joking around, like my awkward. I'm like, oh my gosh, I probably offended them. Like they probably, and I'm like,
I get that.
And I get more annoying and it gets worse.
Yeah. I get that. Not from you. From me, I feel like,
I'm sure.
No, I haven't seen that side of you. But yeah, I get that.
Yes, you have, but it's okay. You're sweet.
I was probably intoxicated, so I probably don't.
It's fine. Anyways, but so just so you know, Chelsea and I, she was my visiting teacher back at Raintree. 11 years ago. Okay, so flash forward. So I went through my divorce. That was like 5 years ago. I'm terrible with years, whatever. And it took me a long time. It takes me a lot to commit, period, and have a serious relationship. And I became a serial dater. I this should be edited out. But anyways, I just was, and I remember feeling, this is really important to say, like, I remember feeling like, I don't think I wonder if I was even really in love, if that was true love. I think love is what you create, and it has to be met with compassion, safe arms, and both. You know, and there's days like 90-10, vice versa.
Oh, yeah.
There's days I can only get 5%, and I'm the worst.
Brown. Are you talking about Brene Brown's? She always says that marriage is not 50-50. Marriage is sometimes 10 and 80 or 10 and 90.
Probably got the quote from online from
Brene Brown. Yeah, probably. And she talks about it's good to come home and both of you be on the same page. Say, hey, I only got 10% left of the rest of the day. I need you to take the 90% today. And when you both come together and you're both like, I only got 20%, then you figure out how you can be nice to each other and how you can get through the rest of the day. Yeah. And talk about what you need to do to bring each other up.
Well, I always tell you that there's good and bad years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because I've been married almost 34 years.
Like, what's the secret? Like,
I
saw the beautiful outlook on marriage, just to say.
Yeah.
It's very beautiful still to me.
Well, see, I've been with my husband since I was 16.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you okay?
He's was my first everything. So that's why I always tell people, I go, I have we have good and bad years.
Like, I suck. Gee.
You know what I mean?
I'm like
suck.
sleeping around.
I mean,
We each have our own path.
Yeah.
Huh?
I said we each have our own path.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We do. And I've told I told you all my kids are still home because I tell them not to get married young.
Yeah.
And to find out who you are before you marry. Because trying to find that out when you're married and then having children is very
really hard.
difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it took me a long time to find me
Yeah.
in the midst of all of that going on. So now my oldest is almost 30 and she's still home. So I would keep her forever if I could.
Like, I was just at home with living with my parents before. I'm almost 30, like in July. And I'm like, before I met Derek, we've only been moved out. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was me.
Yeah, is that, see? But see, and I'm okay
They
with
didn't want
that.
me
wrong
move out
with it.
though.
Yeah.
They want me to stay.
No, see, and
exactly.
that's the thing is, I would kick my boys out, but I would keep the girls. I mean, in all honesty, they're the younger, but they give me more problems than the girls do.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, the boys?
My boys do.
Oh yeah, boys are rough.
Really?
My boys are hard. Oh my god.
Yeah, everyone's
can't
like, girls are
even begin
hard.
to
I'm
tell
like,
you.
no, Maya's like my easiest child. I hope it never
Maya.
changes.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
she's
So sorry,
the
I shouldn't
No,
say name,
yeah.
but I love
Oh, you can say her name. Maya.
Yeah.
your
Thanks.
post today. Was so like, oh my gosh.
I know.
Anyway, sorry.
No, yeah, because my
Sweetest.
oldest Alyssa, she was always the best child. I mean, I remember the first time I spanked her but I just swatted it. She was devastated.
I know.
Because she had never been corrected.
Right?
And she was like, she was older, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, you would have thought that her puppy died or something.
That's Maya, because I
is
never
it?
yell at her.
Yeah.
And if I yell at her, she's like, Mom, I'm so sorry. Like, what did I do? And I'm like, what? It's okay to be a child, dear.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's how Alyssa is. And
Yeah.
then Kendra, she was always in trouble. Mm-hmm. But she's my autistic one. So she's
Yeah.
the one that would have her temper tantrums, get
Yeah.
holes in the walls,
Yeah.
all that fun stuff. So
Yep. Yeah.
I've been around the block.
Yes, you have.
Same,
Yeah.
but in different ways.
Yes.
Yeah, different ways.
Yeah.
So, went through divorce, and like I mentioned, I still have a beautiful outlook on marriage, and it was exactly what we wanted, and it was meant to happen. Like, we were meant to get married,
Yeah.
we were meant to end, and I learned so much, and what I'm attracted to, and I learned about me, and what makes me me, and it's important to have someone, like the things that make me Shayla. The awkward, like, humor. I always joke around. I'm like, I feel like if I healed from my trauma, I wouldn't be funny anymore.
That's
like,
how I
it's-
feel like I am. Like,
it's
I
like-
almost feel like that. That's funny you say that. I'm not as funny as I used to be. Just throwing that out
You're
there.
healing.
I'm healing. I'm maturing and I hate it. I told Brian, I was like, I used to be really funny. Now I'm like really serious and I don't really know how to deal with this. But sorry, stay on track. We're staying on track.
You're good. Where I was getting at before, where after my divorce, I like questioned if I was really, truly in love, because I realized I never really had that safe space. I didn't know. I'm like, I don't remember ever being happy. And I don't want to say getting my way, but like being who I am and happy. Like both of us, it always seemed to be like, he was miserable doing something that I loved, vice versa, or like, but then I wouldn't want him knowing he would be miserable, so I wouldn't bother asking. I lost a lot of part of who I am. So I wondered, I became a serial dater after. I'm just like, you know what? I was tied down, and I knew it wasn't a waste, but I'm like, I'm getting older and it's Utah County. Like,
I gotta get it together.
but at the same time, I was very protective of my heart, and I felt like my heart was numb and just didn't work. I wondered. And that's the thing. Like I had the best memories of my roommate and like friends and everything. Singles ward, and like I got closer with my parents. I'm like, oh, back here. But I remember dating all these guys, and they would meet this check marks, like the checklists I didn't even think I had. And all my friends were like, what are you doing? He's in love with you? Or like, I was a lot better looking back then. I didn't think so, but I'm like, dang it, why was I so hard on myself? But I would get these like amazing guys, and it's like, oh, that must be really hard. But I felt like my heart didn't work, and I'm like, am I ever gonna be able to feel? And I just kept filling this void. And then I worked on myself, got back to the temple. It was a long repentance process, concentrated on other things. And I'm glad I did that. And I have my habits, and I don't necessarily, I feel like I used to drink because I was sad, and it would make it worse. And it was for the wrong reasons. Now I have, this sounds really messed up, a healthy relationship if possible with alcohol. No, but
No, I get that. Yeah.
And it's also like, I'm not going to the bar every night, so I got back to the temple, back to that. And I was going FHE, like being really involved in the ward and immersing myself. My best friend Jade and I, we gone to Pleasant Grove, graduated together. We known best friends for years.
Yeah.
We moved in together. She bought a condo at Italian Village, actually, down the road. And a fun story, my first place I lived was right here at Stone. I don't even remember these apartments.
Oh, yeah, over there.
I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But we went to this stake activity, ice skating, and that's where I met baby daddy, future sperm donor.
Yeah.
Donator, sperm donor. And it was months. I knew there was an attraction. He was really flirty. I could go longer down that road. It's not necessary. Finally, I invited him over for FHE months later. I'm like, okay, this is safe. Nothing's going to happen. I got back to the temple. We're good. I trust myself. And, I got pregnant, and I remember thinking, this is really interesting to be honest. So my mom, I look back and my mom, it's when COVID, 2020, and with the symptoms and everything, I remember having this night, and I just wanted to see, I would see after moving in the condo, I'm like, okay, I'm back into college life, single life. I'm working on myself. I'm living my best life.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I wouldn't drive home too often. I would talk to them on the phone. But I remember it was in the middle of the night. I drove out to my parents' place in Eagle Mountain, it was 1 a.m. in the morning. And growing up, I used to really cuddle with my mom a lot. I was very affectionate. I still am affectionate, but it was so weird. And I remember just like old times, I crawled in between my mom and dad. My dad's hearing aids, he wasn't wearing them. And my mom's like, hi. But she loves it. I'm the baby.
Yeah.
And I remember just I wanting to cuddle up to my mom and having that around. I drove out, and I remember just crying and but out of love. I'm like, oh, I just love my mom. And I look back to that moment, and I realized it was kind of a maternal, I think I was starting to get that maternal and that love, and the spiritual comfort, something big's about to happen. The next day, my mom let me know, hey, I just found out my close coworker test positive for COVID. I know, but I was so glad you came over and cuddled. I don't regret it. But I thought you should know. And I'm like, oh, shoot, because I was so nauseous. Yeah. So I thought I had COVID. And I was platonic on our living room floor, in the condo.
Yeah.
And I thought I was just so nauseous and tired for a couple days. And and I couldn't hold anything down. And I'm like, oh, great, it's COVID.
Yeah.
And then what I was finally able to hold down, I woke up in the middle of the night. And I'm like, I just want pickles. I ate half a jar of pickles, and then the other half an hour later, I ate a whole jar of dill pickles.
I support it.
And I'm like, what's going on?
I love pickles.
I do too. Yeah.
But, long story shorter, I guess, I found out I was pregnant. I thought it was COVID. And then I'm like, maybe just in case I realized, wait.
Yeah.
and I had a pregnancy test. And what's interesting is the lines, I had to take like 2 or 3 because the lines, and Jade, she's very blunt and very like direct. And she's like, no, she's like, oh, don't worry. Like I'm like, I think it's supposed to be going the opposite way.
Yeah.
And she's like, no. And she even called me. I'm like, I'm just going to go to the clinic and find out. And she called me. She's like, I'm 97% sure. She's like, I just read the back. She said she hung up the phone and looked, she's like, oh shit. And she's like, oh no. And I was pregnant. But to bring back the whole Chelsea thing and like how that reconnected.
Yeah.
I remember just being in shock and being like not knowing what to do. And, I had taken a day after pill and then also like another one a week later because I was not committed in a relationship.
Yeah.
And I remember being very worried. I'm like, well, if I am like pregnant, I don't know how far along I am, but if this baby is alive, it's going to have deformities. Like this is very, like, especially like I've been drinking first trimester. Yeah. So I felt for the first time, like even though abortion was against my beliefs always, it was kind of like almost like a survival, like, and I remember thinking, why don't I feel terribly wrong about this?
Yeah.
It's rare that I feel like, oh, this is so right. But I remember feeling at peace. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? And I think Heavenly Father just trusted me knew I would make
the right decision.
Yeah. And I think there's good, better, and best. I want to say that right now is like, I know that birth moms, like they do change their mind sometimes, and that's okay. And I know that if I had chosen to keep Hayden, I would have given him a really good life. Yeah. I knew what I wanted for him, and I was sealed in the temple. And honestly, like this is really sacred to me. I want him to be raised in the church personally, and that's up to him. I knew he would have that choice. And I mainly knew I want him to have a mom and dad involved, like a father involved in his life, and that's what I wanted for him. Yeah. And so I remember unnecessary details, but basically I went to the abortion class and it's the script, and I thought there'd be like 10 other teenagers and me. I'm like 26, 27. I'm going to be the oldest one here. And there was one other 26-year-old. Yeah, who was 26. And I go in and I'm like, I don't know if you're scared or feel alone. I know I do. And she's like, oh my gosh, you want to grab coffee after this? I'm like, can we do that? And I remember, and it was such an awkward, well, I guess, like, we're so awkward. I love that. But she heard me ask for adoption information because that was included in the big packet. Yeah. And I had the first ultrasound after, and I remember thinking, this was so interesting. This sounds messed up to say. I remember praying, I'm like, okay, please don't have a heartbeat. If there's a heartbeat, I didn't know how far along I was. 2 different guys. I don't judge myself now, I'll be honest. Yeah. Other people can, that's okay. I promised you I paid for it and there were consequences.
that I didn't know Ryan was the birth father.
No, I didn't.
I didn't share that in my story, but there was one other guy too. Yeah, and I actually had almost the same thing happen to me. I broke up with Ryan and I went to my bishop. I repented. I started going to church and everything. That. Yeah. And I was going back to church. Yeah. Well, so hold on. So I slept with Ryan. We broke up. Yeah. I slept with my ex from before Ryan. And then I was like, you know what? I broke up with Ryan. Honestly, my feelings were towards Ryan, and I was just like, you know what, I'm done with both of them. I'm just going to move on and go find someone else because I kept going back and forth between the two of them, and it was just like too much for me. Yeah. So I was like, I'm just going to go straighten up my life. Hopefully I can figure things out from here. And I was just so naive. I didn't know when you ovulate and stuff. And so once I found out how far along I was able to go back and be like,
does anyone, unless you take a test,
right? Unless you're unless you're trying to have a baby, I feel like it's not talked about, right? Like you don't really, I don't know, maybe
No, you don't. People don't
Yeah.
talk about unless you're trying to get pregnant.
Exactly. And so I didn't
Yeah.
even know that was like a thing. I thought you get pregnant anytime when you had sex.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
oh, no, I don't, because I didn't think I was. I'm like, oh, it hasn't
I
happened
found
yet.
out I ovulate twice, actually, or I used to.
That's
yeah.
a thing?
Oh, yeah. I used to ovulate right after my period and then 2 weeks later, twice. And I found out because of ovulation tests that I would take. So it's really crazy. But I totally understand, like, that guilt, that part that comes with it. Like, guys can go sleep with whoever and it's not a big deal. But then we end up pregnant and we have to figure it out and deal with our consequences. And so, yeah, I went back to church. I talked to my bishop. Literally 2 weeks later, I was taking a pregnancy test because she thought she was pregnant. Sorry, I said your name. I'll bleep that out. But, and then it turns out I was pregnant.
Oh, yeah, you heard that on your podcast. Okay,
so
your
I
episode.
so I was trying to do the right things. And so I think that I had to get in that headspace in order to find out that news and go forward with what I did.
Oh, yeah, and with the girl that sat at the abortion class and one other girl, she's like, do you want to grab coffee after this? I'm like, I don't think I'm feeling coffee, but Mobetta's, I was craving. I'm like, do you have any cravings? Let's go there.
It's a great idea.
But she heard me ask for adoption information. And I remember her challenging me really helped me. Like, it made me question myself. And I didn't realize I needed this. She said, you're telling me you're going to feel this boy or girl grow in your stomach. You're going to be rocking it. You're going to have this baby and then hold it skin to skin, feel love you never have known, and then just hand it off to strangers. She's like, no, you're going to be effed up, the girl, for the next 6 months. She's like, nah, you're going to be broken the next. And the thing is, I had a lot of insecurities after where I'm like, you know, I'm like, I am. It would be the highest. And then I'm like, I'm not. Like, and I'm so grateful for Chelsea. And I would have so many reminders. I will tell you right now that there were so many reminders and many more spiritual confirmations and just like the universe sending signs that this was right. And, you know, it came in waves and everything. But Chelsea, I remember, okay, like I had the ultrasound and I'm like, I remember praying there wouldn't be a heartbeat. And then there's a heartbeat. And I remember the ultrasound looking like a little zombie being because I had a glowing, it's a heart, but looked like an eye. Yeah. And I remember I said, that looks so creepy. But I joke around saying I knew I would die for that little zombie being. Yeah. Like the moment I saw it, and then it's so different even when you hold, but I had this like superpower come over me where I was like, if it's just me, I will fight. I don't care, everyone. I had to tune out all the voices. Yeah. And just, I'm like, okay, this is between me, this child, and God. And I really had to tune out everyone, my mom, everyone. And I remember looking on Instagram of all places about adoption. And this is where this comes in contact finally. And I remember feeling so selfish and guilty. But I searched Utah adoption because I was scared to give out my information to an agency, I'll be honest. Yeah. So I thought, oh, like all these couples are going to contact me. I'm going to break all their hearts. Because to me, that is a really sensitive subject for years of trying financially, everything, years of feeling broken and praying versus 1 year of my life. Yeah. Right? And like of just a sudden, and it's new to me. Yeah. And Chelsea and Tom ended up being the couple. I remember looking through all the profiles, like each post, I found Utah adoption specialists. Each post ended up being a profile. And I remember scrolling through so many and I'm like, well, I don't feel wrong about any of these. And I didn't. And I thought about it. It's because it's such a good, beautiful desire to want to grow your family and give that love and that yearning. And I'm like, all these people are amazing. How am I supposed to shop for parents? Yeah. And then I said a prayer, sobbed Heavenly Father, and then it wasn't till after late that night, they happened to be the couple spotlighted and I recognized her. And I thought it was kind of like the story just auto-populating. Yeah. And I thought she just had it. I'm like, oh, I'm following Chelsea. I didn't realize it was adoption. I'm like, no way. And it was someone I knew. and someone I'm very much with energies and like need to be in person to discern.
Yeah.
And I messaged her that night, and we met the very next day. It was my birthday. Fun fact, I got married on my birthday. Then our divorce finalized on the 20th. And then, and then the anniversary, I'm like, I hate my birthday. And it was just kind of like Heavenly Father, but we met, and it was just, we just met at Chick-fil-A. During my lunch break, I was doing HR. Yeah. You would never think. And they just knew. They were so patient. And, you know, Hayden's now sealed to them. And she was just so patient and just like very genuinely concerned about me. Mm-hmm. And I kept being like, thinking, maybe, you know, it's scary when you sign away your rights.
Yeah.
The wording is brutal.
It is.
It is brutal. And there is it's like a verbal agreement. Unless you like go fight years, or I don't understand. But I knew that the wording is brutal. And it was section 15 that says, I'm doing this because I love my child. And I remember that very last, that's the only thing that got me to sign it. The wording is terrible.
I know, it really is.
But they have fulfilled their word this whole time when they don't need to. They do everything they aren't required to do. Or like, I'm like, you don't owe me anything. You guys are we idolize each other. We truly do. Yeah. And they're trying to grow their family right now. And it's really hard because I want, you know, like I see the amazing mother that she is. And it's so beautiful to see and natural, like for her. I remember she invited me over the very next day after I was discharged. Who does that? The birth mom, you know, when you're trying to build this bond and like figure out, you're thrown into motherhood. Mm-hmm. But she asked if I wanted to cuddle him. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing her hold him when I handed it back. And I'm like, they just look like a match made in heaven. And I always knew like I was a transporter or in the vehicle.
Mm-hmm. The vessel.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew that I was the vessel and like this vehicle, but that the cargo I carried was very precious, and that my sole responsibility was to make sure that it went to like this little zombie being that love, even compared. I'm like, I can't imagine someone loving the child even as much and you know, like it was like written in the stars. Like I knew that it was his destiny and what I wanted for him, and that he was meant to be theirs. And that bishop that helped me get back to the temple, by the way, sorry, I'll hurry and wrap this up.
No, you're good.
He had given me a blessing. This is really important. He gave me a blessing. He knew I was trying to decide, and he knew that I wouldn't let anyone sway me. Yeah. That I was like, he didn't know I decided on adoption, but I also was worried about he was going to try to influence me. But I knew that I loved him and that he was genuine and not fake, and like wouldn't be that preachy.
Yeah.
And then the blessing, it was at his house, him and his wife and I were just sobbing during, and it was really sweet. He gave me a blessing. And in the blessing, he said that this was something that me and this couple, he didn't say like Chelsea and Tom, that me and this couple promised each other in the premortal life. And I remember him pausing and him getting choked up with the spirit. And he said, this is something you and this couple promised each other in the premortal life, that you would find each other and make your way to each other. And I loved this wording. He said, out of immense love, and you both felt honored. And that totally changed my outlook on trials, and like how we both felt honored. Like we were like, hey, you're going to have this issue. I just imagine with my sense of humor. Yeah. It's like, this is going to break me when I get down there. I can't wait to experience pain, a body and everything. Mm-hmm. But I don't, and then like a week, like I'm going to come help you out. You're going to help, you know, we promised we make our way to each other. Yeah. And he also promised in the blessing that we'd always have a good relationship. And we have, and I know it's only been 2.5 years, but it's only like gotten better, especially after some difficult, needed conversations.
Sure, yeah.
but they're trying to grow their family right now. And I just wish everyone could just see, I'm the luckiest birth mom. I'm like, if you could see, like, they fulfill their word, their love, and like just how he's being raised. And it just breaks my heart, like that 1 year of my life versus like years. I'm like, life just isn't fair.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but there's a lot of grace from consequences, or like, I don't know, like neither of us expected our families to come this way.
Yeah.
And when he was born, it birthed a mother on me. And the reason why I brought up all the love and thinking my heart was broken, I wasn't capable of that. I'm like, okay, I know it's a whole different type of love. I'm like, this is love. And it was Valentine's Day the next day.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful, and I feel bad because it should have been the best birth control. And I'm like, I'm capable of this.
Yeah.
I just want 10 more.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no.
It'll happen.
Yeah. So sorry. It takes so long, but
No. I really appreciate you coming on here. And I know how hard it is to share your story and to be vulnerable.
both of you too, though. I love like that you both have those perspectives.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing.
We're a good team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do for you together.
You guys are awesome.
So thank you for coming on.
Sorry it took so long.
No,
You're
good.
fine. No, it was great.
We enjoy hearing your story.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. And we're
Yeah.
excited to.
If you guys don't have any, I don't know how to, maybe you cut this out. I don't know. But they are, Chelsea and Tom, they are trying to grow their family.
Yeah.
It is really hard. And I'm grateful that she shares the hard and sad with me, because I would have never known. I'm so naive, and I would have been ignorant to it. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just a whole different.
It is. It's very taxing, I guess
Yeah.
you could say.
Like, but when is it
having to
my
try to
turn?
find it.
Yeah.
Trying to get,
And you have all this love you can't wait to give.
Yeah, yes. And it's hard because being an adoptive mom, we basically are begging someone to give up something that we know that they love and cherish in order for me to love and cherish that child. And it's a hard thing to do, and to give our control up to someone else, to say, do you think, and then I've said this before, do you think I'm good enough to be a mother
And
of your
that's
child?
the thing I want to like let parents that are looking into adopting, going through those profiles. I remember thinking, I'm like, here are these amazing couples. I remember, thinking there's nothing, I'm not feeling bad feeling this, and I'm not going to, unless, like there is a significant, like where it comes to abuse, like a potential abuse situation or something. But for the 99% and everything, like it's the most beautiful desire. And I want to, I just want to have a baby for all of you.
And you're all
like good enough.
I remember feeling that too. And that was what was so overwhelming, was just seeing how many people were looking to adopt.
It's not
just
fair.
And as a birth mom, you do feel that guilt of, wow, I got pregnant with someone that I'm not even trying or, necessarily care about. But, I totally agree with, before we came here, we had a plan, and you guys found each other, and it all worked out.
Yeah.
And it is a work in
grateful for
progress.
it.
It's not just,
To remind myself, it comes to, I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, it's waves.
Yeah. And I noticed I can forget some spiritual clarity I had. And I'm always, he keeps me in, I think with posts too.
Yeah.
To be honest, but I always have the joy. I can't even tell you that, like, despite the grief, and this is something I communicated to Chelsea, and I told her the night before I was discharged, I looked at her when I'm like, do you want to hold him skin to skin?
Yeah.
She's like, are you sure? Can I do that? I'm like, yeah, I want you to. And I was like, you're a mommy. She's like, I'm a mommy. And I told her, I had the prompt, I'm like, Chelsea, I'm not going to change my mind. And I didn't. That's really hard. I understand there are situations where that does happen.
Yeah.
But that was reassurance, and it helped me understand like her perspective. I'm like, I put myself in her shoes. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're thinking I'm going to change my mind, and that's terrifying and vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
We could lose the gift that you just gave.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's very hard.
I'm grateful for that vulnerability, and just like, yeah, it's just a natural. You can see. I'm like, oh my gosh, a bond. Mm-hmm. And I'm like,
yeah.
He's theirs.
Yeah.
He'll always be my son. I love him.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that love, and I'm so grateful. Like, it's more love.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's so true.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Shayla.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys for having me.